scenes, just his, I don't know what to say, his nuggets, his words of wisdom last night on words creating your reality. I suggest you go take a look at that because it was absolutely phenomenal. And we've got him here today with some behind the scenes, some more nuggets that I'm sure he's going to drop. I want to introduce my sister Reg, and of course, Dr. Dan, who is now like a staple on Rise and Thrive Together. Hey, y'all.
Hey. Super excited to bring you back, Dr. Dan, who we'll get to see again next week for our 1 hour special. As we're heading out to the last two shows, next week is a panelist of extraordinary people, and Dr. Dan will be there, and it will be such a huge contrast of men and women and ideas, and all about decluttering your life. So with that being said, Dr. Dan, I'm super excited that you're back. I know we had so much to talk about when it was over. And I knew I wanted to share a story. I don't remember because that was like so long ago. So I just figured, let me pass it over to you and go and share some of your words of wisdom when we're talking about our words create our reality.
Yeah, definitely. I've been sitting with the idea of spoken and unspoken words. I've been really just kind of diving deep with that concept that we went with yesterday and that I had brought forth. And one of the unspoken words, I sometimes think about like people regretting not saying certain things or not having the strength to express what's most important to them and how that shapes a reality. It reminded me of a YouTube video of some guy who was exploring different street art. And he noticed that there would be messages from people who were leaving a very personal message for somebody, hoping that that person would walk by and read it, and using those unspoken words in a different medium to hopefully let fate have that person cross that message and they change their reality.
Ooh, wow. I'm going to tell you something, and I made it sound like I'm just going to tell y'all. I'm not going to tell our listening audience, so don't listen to what I'm saying. But this morning, I have a tendency to talk to myself, right? I do it quite often. And yes, I do answer back because I'm like the best person to talk to ever. But this morning, as I was driving to Tabata, I was thinking, I'm like, okay, I've got to start doing some videos. And I said, today is Tuesday. What can I match with the word Tuesday? Starts with a T. And it was talk about it. And it's so funny that you mention the unspoken words, because I swear to y'all, my whole premise of talk about it Tuesday, which I didn't talk about other than to myself, was what is it that you have to say to someone or you need to say and you haven't? And what's holding you back? And when is now a good time to talk about it with that person? So that's so funny. And you just confirmed that I need to get on and do that video. So thanks, Dan.
Well, this is perfect. Because didn't we talk about like the words or our energy, right, Dr. Dan? We were having like external, internal, and Raquel and I were having some fun on a text. But I'm going to go to stay what you guys were talking about, because you said you were thinking about like, what do you want to talk about? And Raquel's been on me about my songs. And so energetically, one of my favorite songs that has not been produced is called Unspoken Words.
Wow.
So I have the rough draft of it. I have like, the old version of it. So what, they call the raw copy of it. Yeah. So it's Unspoken Words. So I love it. And and now I'm like, what was that about? Right. Like it was more of a relationship, but that's the whole thing, right? These unspoken words. And it was that time in my life when I thought I was in this relationship. I was in college, this person who I thought was the one. And it was the unspoken words with him that was like the warning signs that I needed to leave. It was like the unspoken actions, right, that were there. And what I didn't say, because in a relationship, if it's this type of conversation, as from friendships to colleagues to relationships, whatever that may be, the only way we can continue to connect and, get to know one another and flow together and, fail together is to not have this assumption, right? These unspoken words, if I didn't say something to Raquel, right? Like if I haven't said it, and then all of a sudden, like we say, this flare, this trigger comes up in the middle of a show or whatever. And she's like, whoa, because we hold it in, with that fear, right? So when you say, Raquel, what holds you back? What is having you, I will assert. And listeners, please feel free to drop in your thoughts and comments. It's fear. Fear is like the number one thing. And all then that fear goes into that mindset that goes into all of these stories. Some, you've got evidence to, many that you don't. And they're all just these experiences in life, right? So they're, like, I'm not going to say it because this is going to hurt their feelings, or this is going to, bring up whatever. So I just love that you talked about unspoken words. Raquel, you were saying that to have it, and I've got the song. So when we talk about the triangle of that energy, external, internal, it here it is, guys, demonstration right here on the court. The three of us had no idea what we were going to talk about. We come on and kind of let things marinate, and here's how it comes up. And we are so on that energetic page. So I love it.
Absolutely. One thing that stood out from what you're saying was that fear piece. And if we were to take that and talk about a specific type of fear, I find that many are afraid of consequences. And the consequence of like having to acknowledge what happened, the impact of their actions, and then on top of that, the repercussions, like what they have to endure afterward, and then come out of and then continue on where they were at.
Now, I know Reg is typing that all up, and I know I don't want to say and interrupt, but I have to.
No, not.
I thought you were. And so if we have this fear of consequences and repercussions, my question is then, Dan, how do we get past that to actually say, like, what is it that we have to do or say to ourselves that we will be able to have the conversation? Like, otherwise, fear we wouldn't talk to anybody or say anything, because if we're afraid of these consequences and repercussions, but what would have us open up and say those words?
Well, I think it goes back to those earlier principles of less is more and investing in loss. Because if you are stepping into something that you're unsure of the outcome, and you have the confidence and the grit to pursue it, then the consequence is just part of the journey. It no longer becomes this big mountain or becomes this thing to fear. It's just part of the equation. And that's that stress and that pressure that makes carbon-based things like people become either clear like a diamond or crumble like stone. Some people get petrified by it. So, I mean, I consider that less is more, way, woo, way. There's less to lose when you are concentrated and focused on the things that you do on a day-to-day basis. There's less room to have these extreme consequences. Sometimes a consequence could be something as small as like a parking ticket, which is not going to impact my physical well-being necessarily. But, you know, financially, it's like I just had to give away a full tank of gas, right? So it's just like rephrasing and repurposing and finding the silver lining, maybe, is what I'm trying to get across. Is like, if you can rephrase it using your double positives and saying like, I get the opportunity to try out this new thing. I get the opportunity to be of service. If like this is what goes on in your head on a day-to-day basis, you're less likely to put yourself in a situation where the consequences are very dire. So
correct me if I'm wrong here, Dan. I heard a couple of things. You're still tight about that parking ticket. And if y'all don't know what we talked about, go back to the show from last night. And two, what I'm hearing you say is basically, and again, correct me if I'm wrong, that we have to sort of die to ourselves in order to think about, and I don't mean die in the literal sense, but we have to stop putting our ego first in order to think about the other person, to have that conversation.
Mm-hmm.
right? I don't know.
Yeah, I mean, I would say that like when those words sit inside and the best version of yourself's decisions sit inside, they ferment and sometimes rot, and then it can
Mm,
prevent. And when that occurs, then people are overcompensating in some way by avoiding the main issue. And so, yeah, that's why I think less is more, because in that case, it's going to come up. And the
mm,
more things that come up that you can handle and deal with, you can start to forgive yourself, like some of the comments are saying. Um, I think that that's true. Like forgiving yourself sometimes can also be having grace, or even
mm,
forbearance, even, because forbearance, in my opinion, is very different than grace. Grace is like being able to allow those to be, whereas forbearance is there is some action that could be taken and the person chooses not to.
mm.
Deep.
So what's your suggestion on how we go about this?
Well,
We don't want it to sit and ferment, because
yes.
then when you express it, it won't be expressed in the same vein of love. Once it ferments is what I'm thinking about, how I think about it. It's not like you're making wine, right? Fermentation with the grapes is great for wine, but may not be so much so for a person having a conversation.
Yes.
Thoughts, either of you, I guess.
Yeah. Although the first thing that comes up for me is, and Raquel's heard this a lot from me, which is what you resist persists.
Hmm.
So that's the fermenting, right? Like what you resist. So one of the tips I would say, and Raquel was saying it earlier, like she speaks to herself out loud. She is able to hear what she's saying out of her mouth. And because she builds that muscle, that is something she's committed to, she'll be able to hear or notice some of those words and what energy it has. And then she's like, huh. And then she'll take some action and call. Many times we talk about like, oh, I didn't hear from you, because she's like, I was thinking out loud. I was speaking out loud. I was handling what I was needing out loud. I had to hear it for myself. Some people record themselves. And then a lot of the audience knows, Dr. Dan, that I like to journal it. So many times when I'm in that conversation of that I want to resist, and then that the emotion takes over, I take a moment and I write it out. And then I get to look at it. And writing is so powerful, right? From pen to paper, not type it, but write it. Then look at that. It takes out that emotion. And then I'm able to get clear about what I need to say. And that's often inside my relationship where, like love my husband and we have great tools, but sometimes it just comes to that. And rather than blowing up, or it blows up, right? I fail epically. And then I take that time to write out what I need to say. And then, but to hold it and never speak it, that then just becomes like you're cutting off, like Raquel said, another piece of layer of love. And then resentment comes in and all of that stuff comes in.
So Dan,
Absolutely.
in the time that we have left, I know we kind of went over. What is it that you really, and during this time of the holiday season, and people go through all these different spaces, what is it that you can actually share with our audience? If it's one takeaway that you want them to have and to at least hear, whether or not they put it into action is on them. You've done your part and you've shared. So what is it that you'd like to share?
I want to share this philosophy that I learned that comes from Wudong. Um, and it really speaks to being able to curate your words
Hmm.
in an indirect way. And the saying goes, slow breath, calm heart. Calm heart, peaceful spirit. Peaceful spirit, happy human. Happy human, happy humanity.
Wow. Sis, did you get that?
I'm right up to peaceful spirit
Give it
is
to
what?
us again. Yes. Peaceful spirit is.
It's a peaceful spirit, happy human. Happy human, happy humanity.
Wow. Hmm. I don't know if there's anything else that we need to say after that. That was so calming and just like, wow.
That's
Sit with that.
beautiful.
Sit with that. I've got to say it again, and before we wrap this up. And the takeaway from Dr. Dan is philosophy If I could just read it, curate your words. Slow breath equals calm heart. Calm heart equals peaceful spirit. Peaceful spirit equals happy human, and happy human equals happy humanity. I mean, that's something you have to sit with. Okay. So, my suggestion, our suggestion, is you sit with that and really and truly think about whether you are letting things ferment that can severely impact a relationship. And when we say relationship, it doesn't necessarily mean intimate. Is it worth it to ferment? If you value and appreciate that relationship, I suggest you open your mouth and start speaking, but speak out of love, not to hurt the person. Okay? Because if you care about somebody, the last thing you really want to do is hurt them. And reread this philosophy because it is absolutely so, it's impactful, it's important, and it not only involves us, but it involves humanity. Notice how it ends with happy humanity. Happy me, happy humanity. So think about that as you go through the rest of this holiday season and the rest of your life. This is not just for the holidays. Dan, we want to thank you. We know we went over like my sister knew we would. I admit that. We want to thank you. You always, always come here and you never cease to amaze us. You always blow us away with the nuggets that you have. And we really and truly appreciate the friendship that we've formed. We are looking forward to seeing you next week for our hour-long special, our panel discussion on decluttering your life. Folks, be real with yourself and be honest with yourself and just join us and sign on. And we are also launching our masterclass, Rock the Mindset Masterclass, this Thursday from 7 p.m. Eastern Standard Time to 8:30 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. There is still time to register. You can go to our website, riseandthrivetogether.com. If you want to purchase your tickets because you just want to jump in and take action and not think too much about it, where you overthink and outthink yourself, go to https://rise and thrive together /masterclass.com. After
RiseandThriveTogether.com/masterclass.
risingthrive.com. There you go. Y'all will get it. Just go to our website and we got it all there. Okay. Remember, folks, together we can rise and thrive. Till next time.